the cause is much bigger than any of us here. You know, it's definitely a global issue. Being able to add my little bit to it, I'm excited for that. We can go down and then we'll shift over. Hopefully it inspires other people and one person gets a little like spark to like go out and like make a difference.
For over 40 years, I've been trying to decorate Harlem, to say, from the east side to the west side.
See, a famous artist. Franco travels all over the world, and it's a rarity that you're seeing him.
If you live long enough, you'll see a lot of changes that you'd never believe could happen.
I've always got the education that I wanted, you know? And to think that there's people out there across the world that's getting denied that opportunity, it's 2016, I can't believe that's even happening right now. You know, that it's kind of mind-blowing to me.
This is the story of an ambitious campaign. We fought brutality with arts and creativity. The fact that we brought so many artists together, people who did not know anything about Iran, about the Bahá'ís, about the persecution of the Bahá'ís in Iran, and then they created these amazing works of art all around the world. It shows that there is a willingness among artists and ordinary people to join such a struggle.
Street art is amazing because it's a forum for dialogue. You know, the way that you depict things and where you put things, it creates a story, and anyone that walks by gets to interact with that piece.
It brings beauty to the neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? It makes the neighborhood look alive.
There are things where people don't want to read a pamphlet, people don't want to go to a meeting, but if they see art, they want to get involved and they want to hear about what's happening and they inquire.
How'd you do it? I'm just speaking. No, but how'd you do it? I've been thinking about it on my phone. I need a map.
Imagine not being able to think critically and creatively and like make up your own mind and choose what you want to create. That would just be sad. It's a great cause. And then we found this wall that was like 2 perfect little ruler sections. And then we have 1 day to paint it. It's like, it's all pretty serendipitous that it's happening.
The ruler sends a message. It sends a message. If people got any education, what do a ruler represents? And it's when it's broken, that means education is broken. It's not a full force, you know? So let's try to put it back together, the same thing they're trying to do with the education. Let's try to fix it instead of destroy it, you know? But it's good.
Yeah, I like what you said. Thank you.
I like that. That's nice.
I am not a Baha'i. My name is Bahari, but I'm not a Baha'i. And many people ask me, why did you start an awareness-raising campaign if you are not a Baha'i? The answer is very simple. I don't think that we can see real change in Iran or the rest of the world if we do not recognize the right of religious minorities. The Iranian government does not recognize Baha'i faith as a religion. And the Baha'is, since 1979 Islamic Revolution, they have been under a lot of pressure, under different kinds of persecution. Their stores are torched, their cemeteries are desecrated, they have been jailed, they have been tortured, they have been executed. And not only that, the executioners in some cases have desecrated those dead bodies with anti-Baha'i slogans. How shameful is that? And I, as an Iranian, as a non-Baha'i Iranian, feel responsible for that, feel guilty about the way that the Baha'is have been treated. So I have to do something. I think denial of higher education is the worst kind of discrimination against the Baha'is. Since 1979 Islamic Revolution, the Baha'is have not been able to teach or study in Iranian universities.
You always knew that, oh, I'm in school and I'm studying, I'm gonna get good grades and everything is gonna be fine. But when I wanna go to university, someone's gonna stop me. It's not gonna happen.
I finished high school in 1991. And at that time, because of my religion, I was not able to sit for the entrance exam to go to the university. So I applied, like many other Baha'i children. They would be like, well, what is your religion? And as soon as I say it's Baha'i, they're like, whoa, no, Baha'is are not allowed to go to universities. So that was the main roadblock, I would say, that we had, or the challenge.
This is actually enshrined in a document, a policy document that was revealed, and it was signed by the then and current Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei in 1991. And one of the stipulations of this government was that Baha'is would not be able to go to university, as well as being denied public sector jobs, and many of their opportunities to make a living would be impeded as well.
When Baha'is saw that the Baha'i students could not study in Iranian universities and the Baha'i teachers could not teach in Iranian universities, they started BIHE, the Baha'i Institute of Higher Education. It's an informal, underground university for the Baha'i students who are denied of higher education.
The people who founded it, they were the university professors, instructors who used to work at the universities in Iran, but because of their religious beliefs, they were just let go. And so they decided to come together and found a small university, so to speak, so that our youth, Baha'i youth, would be able to be given a chance to sit and study.
The BIHE is an educational miracle. It has no real campus. Baha'i students get together in different Baha'i houses. Sometimes they have a teacher present in the classroom. Sometimes the teacher is in another country and they're in contact with the teacher by the internet. There is this virtual campus for the BIHE, and I really wish we could show you the beautiful faces of these amazing young men and women in these classes. But unfortunately, we cannot, because teaching and studying at BIHE in Iran is a crime. And these people could be incriminated through showing their footage.
Good morning, New York City.
A lot of world leaders in town. We've got President Obama, Putin, the Pope is going to be in town. So roads are going to be closed off on short notice.
We started the campaign in New York because every year the United Nations General Assembly opens and world leaders from everywhere come and speak, and all eyes are on New York. And we wanted to take that opportunity through the murals and the street art to inject into the discussion concerns about human rights, because usually when the Iranian president and the Iranian foreign minister come and are interviewed by the American media, the discussion is always about the nuclear deal or other issues around geopolitics. We wanted to make sure that human rights also got on the agenda.
We do not jail people for their opinions. The government has a plan to improve, enhance human rights in the country, as every government should.
We were first approached by Mazia about exploring how street art could really come together with a major human rights issue that nobody was really talking about. Initially, it was just a one-time thing. We did try to see how the people would take it, how it would go from this painting murals throughout different areas of New York City. It was the first in its kind because it's the first time that there's really a human rights campaign blending in street art and pushing art and an issue in a way that has never been done to this scale.
When you look at these amazing murals, you don't necessarily think of all the work that goes into them, but there's a lot. There's negotiating with the wall owners. We want the support of the local community. We have to make sure that we're obeying any signage laws. And then there's the technical aspects of getting the right kind of lift, scissor lifts or crane lifts. We have to make sure we have the right kind of paint, if it's spray paint or acrylic. The artist has to feel comfortable with the brickwork, and sometimes the brick is very porous or it's very uneven. But there's a lot of coordination and outreach work, and then also technical production work that goes into every single mural.
Oh yeah.
I think the mural is absolutely amazing. It absolutely stopped me in my tracks. I saw it from a few blocks away, and this was a lucky find for me. I just happened to get off the train at the right time and stumble upon a little bit of amazingness. You look at this and you see talent and passion, and you have to stop for that. I think it's phenomenal. I want him to come do it in my apartment. I want a tattoo. I don't know. I'm obsessed. I'm gonna go home and Google Astro, and I'm gonna Google education is not a crime. Dude, man, you are insanely talented, dude. Insane.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
J'ai essayé d'illustrer les arches de l'université d'Iran. Alors, elles sont exactement comme ça, sauf que moi, j'ai mis mon style dessus. On voit mes formes de graffiti. Je les accroche sur la structure. Et j'ai aussi mis un tunnel avec une lumière au bout du tunnel pour symboliser l'éducation et le savoir et la lumière.
If you see the history of street art and its connection to graffiti, graffiti started in the 1970s, 1980s, because these were areas, while New York City was bankrupt, where resources were being drawn out of these communities. And you had a group of young people who felt disenfranchised and forgotten about. And one way that they made their presence known was by sort of saying their name and where they're from on buildings and on trains that would pass through the whole city as a way of saying, like, we're not gone, we're not forgotten.
The best thing about doing murals on the street, in my opinion, is that you let people to connect with art free. You don't need to pay. It's anything that anyone can have access, right? And then it's also a way to communicate with people, also a way to educate people. I'm so glad to be on board of this project that is education is not a crime, right? So all the artists that came here to paint murals related about education. Yes, sir.
Are you gonna be like painting the rest with the water and her playing with her children?
Yeah, can you see here in the bottom, it's a gray. That's gonna be the water. Like every time that I'm painting, anyone come by to ask me any question, I'm gonna stop what I'm doing and I'm gonna talk to this person. For me, it's very important.
Hey. I can't wait till you put the hat.
Especially New York City, where everybody's rushing, nobody has time here. So if they stop for 5 minutes to talk to me, I think it's very important, and it's a way to engage and exchange with the community. And the art has this power.
My name is Nelson Sekis. I'm from Chile. I grew up in a culture of a lot of political art. In the 80s, in my country was a lot of tension because we were under a military government. So I always saw like graffiti, like political stuff, They use the walls to put messages on, to use it as a kind of like a newspaper in a way, to express an idea or to communicate to the public, you know.
Knowing that this art has a message that goes beyond maybe just someone's personal interest, but something that extends to a universal truth that we all kind of believe in, or we all, at least here, would take for granted, but feel very strongly about the ability to speak your own mind and express your feelings, express your political thoughts through the written word, through cartooning, or in this scenario, it's great that the artist is expressing his thoughts and his philosophies through art.
Almost 100 years ago, when Diego Rivera was painting his murals, the artists involved were often trying to give a voice to people who didn't have a voice, the lower classes of societies, ordinary people, because that's what street art is really about. And it's not just one vision and one kind of art and one technique or one philosophy. It's really like people coming together when they go out in the street and decide to take over the public space to express themselves. And that's the whole process of who we paint for, what we paint for, coming out of your studio and your bubble and really connecting with the world is, I think, what street art is doing.
I'm Roan, I'm from Melbourne, Australia. I've been painting on the streets since around 2001. I don't often do work with a political message, so this is something new for me. So still trying to keep a very peaceful, beautiful portrait which is in line with my style of work, but trying to tell a small story with that as well. Painting on the street is, it gives you an instant dialogue with people. It's quite direct. You hear from people right on the street and you can start discussing it with them. It's something they start discussing with the community, and it just starts a dialogue, and being able to do that is quite powerful.
I'm Daquan Bjornson. This is Daquan Bjornson Jr. I went to school here, so it was pretty bland, I guess. And it brings an inspirational presence to the neighborhood, you know? Speaks to people who are eager to learn. That's what's so dope about it.
It was all new to me. Like I had no idea about it, and that's what I kind of like I'm learning about it, but now I'm going to share this on my social media, and people are going to discuss it and talk about it there, and they might talk to their friends about it.
Nice job. It's good for the kids, the environment, you know? Everything. You're doing a great job, man. God bless you, man.
It's quite weird that I'm this big, but oh, it's beautiful. It's my story, and I'm blessed. It feels good to be the face of so many people in your life that you know they've suffered so much, but they can't do much. I decided to come here because I wanted to continue education, and I want to do something for all the people that I left behind. And they don't have a voice. They can't do much. They are fighting through. They're studying against everything that is happening, all the oppositions. They're fighting. They're going to PhD. They're studying every day to get themselves educated. But the world needs to know.
I just noticed that you guys were putting up a mural,
And I asked this young man, what is it? And he said that the young lady was in Iran, and because of her religion, she couldn't, get educated, so she came to the States, and she was able to study. And this area needs that, even though she's from Iran, like, these kids need to know, pick up a book and read it, you know what I'm saying?
Religious extremism, xenophobia, segregation, these are not monopolies of the Iranian government. They exist in different parts of the world. So people identified with our campaign, and then we decided to go international.
Since the 1980s, the Iranian government has expelled, arrested, and harassed any youth from the Baha'i faith who has tried to receive an education in that country. Now, education is not a crime. It should never be one, ever. And Iran is doing a great disservice to the world and to the youth of their country by not allowing these people to be educated. So, I'm asking you to join me in a campaign called Education is Not a Crime. And just to go on, make a video of yourself talking about why you think education should not be a crime.
I believe that the Iranian government, by denying Baha'is and other minorities education, is doing itself the biggest harm because it's losing the creative impact of this generation. It's losing true progress for civilization.
This is genocide of the worst sort. Like in American South, for example, in South Carolina, it was forbidden to teach blacks to read or write.
Prevention of education is to harm someone, then it's to dehumanize someone, and I think when you do that to a human being, then you also do that to yourself.
The world is a global community. What happens in one corner of Iran can be reflected within 24 hours throughout the world.
Residents in Bondi may have noticed a striking piece of art on the beach's seawall today. It's part of a global street art campaign to raise awareness about the oppressed Baha'i community in Iran.
I think it's quite a deep way of raising awareness, because it's not just walking around with banners and protesting. Rather, this is looking to mobilise and engage young people, all sorts of different demographics, and do it through art is a much more, I think, in my opinion, a very meaningful way to do that.
When we look at art and human rights, you can think of music, which has inspired people to suddenly start thinking about issues they never would have. I mean, one great famous example was Bob Dylan's song Hurricane, where there was a person who had been wrongly accused of a crime, but through art, it became a very popular cause and the case was heard again. If you look at paintings, you look at movies, any form of art can provoke people into thinking in a way they might not have before.
The piece that I've done depicts the emotional and psychological struggles that a lot of Baha'i youth in Iran are facing right now. It shows their will to get educated and the battle that they're fighting against the system to build a brighter future for themselves. I don't think a lot of people in India especially know about this, and there are a lot of similar problems of casteism and other communities being pushed behind in India too. So I think a lot of people here will be able to relate to the issue.
We're painting a big wall that's about 10 meters high by 20 meters long, I think.
I think it's a really interesting piece, and that it's art. Doing it through art is definitely a stronger message than just pure information. It makes people think.
I felt that I needed to start to have a voice in the world. There's a lot of things that need to be changed and made better, and if we're going to have a future as a species, there's a lot of work to be done. And that's what these characters are on the wall. They've got protest signs and banners, and they're making a peaceful protest, a march. It's about raising awareness and getting people to think a bit more.
I love it. I love that we combine art with a very serious topic, actually, and I love that through art you can actually raise a lot of awareness, and so I think it's one of the best ways to actually transform somebody else is through art, because it touches your heart rather than simply your mind.
I've made works, for about 40 years now against war and against different forms of oppression, political oppression around the world. Well, I think art is very important in terms of understanding human rights because it communicates very directly, and especially for young people, they're not going to sit and read long articles or sit down with a copy of Chomsky. They're going to react much more to images. It's not really telling people what to do, but it's encouraging people to think about the issue.
De contrapor, colocar no céu esse conhecimento, os livros voando, que representam um ideal, né? E aí no chão, ali no pé dela, para contrapor com esse ideal, tem a realidade ali, né? Que é um monte de empecilhos e um monte de gente tentando impedir essa menina de alcançar o objetivo dela, né?
People really identified with the message of the campaign and appreciated having these beautiful murals on their walls. But in one instance, in Red Hook neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York, the situation was different. We had a very impressive, beautiful work of art of a woman whose voice was taken away from her. And one day we saw that it was vandalized with paintballs. We did not know who did it, who was the individual or the group of individuals who vandalized the mural. And then they started to harass the owner of the building, and we had to paint over the mural, unfortunately. Did anyone claim responsibility for those paintballs?
No one.
What do you think it was? It was a bunch of kids who wanted to have fun, or they were really prejudiced?
It's very prejudiced, yes. There were sayings that it was just too close to the World Trade Center, and the firemen that go by have to see this, they've lost loved ones.
This is in celebration of freedom of expression.
It has nothing to do with that. We try to explain this to people, and they will not listen.
I came home from vacation, and it was there. And it had already been shot up by the time I got here. I think really, not just unfortunate, it was embarrassing. It was making a lovely and important and actually a fairly complicated statement. And people are often pretty simple about things. But there again, I don't know, maybe it brings up issues that need to be brought up. It certainly created a conversation in the neighborhood.
It was a really sad moment. But as a result of that vandalism, our campaign was on the cover of New York Times art section. So we became even more famous. Millions of people who did not know anything about the campaign got to know us through that vandalism.
It's very similar to what happened in Iran to what happened here in South Africa. A large number of people are denied access to education just because of either their religious background or their racial profile. So in Iran, because a lot of them are denied access because of their religion, in South Africa, a lot of people are denied because of their race.
We spent some time interviewing people in South Africa. The opportunities given to people were very limited according to what somebody else, somebody white and powerful and distant, said they were able and allowed to do.
The type of education that we received during the apartheid, which was referred to as Bantu education, one would say it was horrible. Horrible in the sense that we were not receiving the same type of education like the white people were receiving.
You know, apartheid was like a monster staring at every black man. The feeling was that of hate. The feeling was that of being hurt by the fact that one could not see the future, as it were.
I couldn't go to the schools that was meant for blacks, and I couldn't go to the school that was meant for whites. Coloreds were not considered black. We were considered colored. We were not white, we were not black. In those days, you basically had two main things that you could do as a so-called colored person. You could do nursing or you could do teaching.
You come up with the law with the intention of denying other people some opportunities, but it will come back. It will hurt you as well. So this is what exactly happened here in South Africa. The white people suffered much as we suffered.
As we gathered some of these stories, it really started to flesh out the campaign for me personally, and I more and more understood that this isn't something that is just about the Baha'is in Iran. It's about identifying this particular form of discrimination everywhere in the world.
So my mom actually is from North Carolina and grew up in segregated South during Jim Crow laws, and so she has always shared lessons with me about the experience of, drinking out of colored-only water fountains or attending schools that were black-only. And so when I think of education discrimination, for me, it's so much more than sort of the economic development and the potential of that country. And for an individual, it's more about how you are taking away their humanity.
When we went through her collection, we talked about making sure we were telling the story of individuals who were working for change on the ground. The average person in their own community versus where the media was picking up the marches and what was happening on the Capitol.
It parallels with what's happening right here. I think that the murals will depict an aspect of education, because everything doesn't come out of the books. It comes from the images, the visual images, whether it's on a wall or if they see something happening on the street corner. And so certainly these visual images are crucial to community development.
Welcome to everybody. We are so happy and excited to have this incredible work of art here that not only is beautiful in terms of its construction and its execution, but also in message. And it is wonderful to have something like this to inspire the neighborhood kids, people just walking by. We have people of all cultures and backgrounds coming together to celebrate in this historic locale for the city of Atlanta. We get a round of applause for these amazing artists who do it. I mean, straight up slayed it.
Yes, I'm old and I'm gray. And she tell me why don't get a change. I said nobody want me anymore.
The Iranian government is one of the most hypocritical governments in the world. Iranian propaganda TV channels are full of reports about the dispossessed African American community, about educational discrimination against African American community, and some of it is true. But the Iranian government has really no interest in educational equality, inequality, period.
Students on more than 100 college campuses have rallied from coast to coast against institutional racism.
Getting equal education in the United States is all but a dream for African Americans and other minorities.
There are major disparities in the American educational system.
So when we decided to continue the campaign, we thought it would be interesting to be based in Harlem, one of the bastions of civil rights movement, and find parallels between what the Baha'is of Iran are going through and the African Americans' struggle for equality.
In Harlem, there are a number of murals going up with messages about human rights and education.
A few were put up in Harlem last year, and they were so well received that Harlem is now a focal point.
This is the 6th mural going up as part of this summer's campaign, and at least 9 more will be going up in the coming weeks.
I think with the African American community, their situation after post-slavery time kind of mirrors the treatment of Baha'is in Iran. they had to go to the segregated schools. And in many cases, they had to open their own schools and colleges. And that's what is happening in Iran with Baha'is.
It makes sense that the campaign is in Harlem. That at the end of the day, you're talking about a group of people that are being discriminated against. And that discrimination is being, you know, sort of directed because of something arbitrary like religion, which is, you know, a skip and a jump away from something, it being race or gender or sexual orientation. And that's the way that people can connect to it.
We had murals in different boroughs and different parts of New York City, in Brooklyn, in Queens, in different parts of Manhattan. But we had 3 murals in Harlem, and the reaction of people was amazing. People got us as soon as we talk about the campaign. People understood discrimination. We did not have to explain it much because people have lived through discrimination. People know what discrimination is. And because of that, when we wanted to continue the campaign, we knew that we have to come back to Harlem because I think Harlem has become the home for the campaign.
My name is Malta Alicia. My father's Costa Rican, my mom's Dominican. Born and raised here in Harlem. So proud to be here. Living here was kind of rough in the 80s. We were living in a homeless shelter in 137th Street. And I said, wow, I want to go to college. The only means was to join the Army National Guard. So I became a combat medic. And in return, I went to college. I don't have the whole gift of conversation, but I do have a better ability to share my visuals. And for me, it's a great tool. Seeking how to convey an idea into something that someone else understands it from. And what I can do is offer a positive message.
And the winner is George Faison for the win.
We met the first African-American winner of the Tony Award, George Faison, who was the choreographer for The Wiz.
What did you say? Thank you so very much.
His theater hosted one of the first murals that we painted in the neighborhood, a beautiful portrait by Ricky Lee Gordon from South Africa.
So we're working on a campaign. It's called Not a Crime, and it's to do with the Baha'is in Iran, the religious minority, or the largest religious minority of the country. They aren't allowed to go to university. They aren't allowed to teach at university.
Sounds like Memphis. That's why I bought the firehouse, and it was a way of giving back. You know, I'm crusading, for the children here in Harlem. But nobody's really interested. The government's not interested. The politicians aren't interested. Hey, listen, you know what I'm talking about because we are all in the same battle. But I am just amazed. Any time that you can give inspiration, just subliminally, you'll see it, and then it'll process. You'll forget about it, and then it'll come back to you. And that's what art does.
Yes, I'm old and I'm gray. And she tell me why I don't get a change. I said nobody want me anymore. Lord, and I'm still around.
I think a lot of people are happy to just have like some color on the block, especially for the kids too. They seem excited about it, so I feel like so far so good. I feel like everyone's kind of digging it so far.
Harlem needs more artwork. New York needs more artwork. The world needs more artwork. And doing any artwork, especially on like the side of a school where you can influence children and people that work in the school, I think that's a great thing. I'm really just trying to show someone, in this case a woman who has maybe dreams and ambitions to become something, and the different colors that sort of look like her hair represent the different opportunities that she could pursue if only she had an education.
As an organization that's not necessarily a part or based in Harlem, it's really important, I think, for the community to have ownership of it and feel that it's something that they can stand behind. We have participated in a number of street fairs here in Harlem where we've actually been invited by the community to participate.
So then you get to pick some colors and you're gonna just dab them to create a stencil. I want you to think. I want you to put yourself in Nassim's place. And Nassim is just one example of lots of people who doesn't have the opportunity to go to university because her government won't let her because of what she believes and who she is. How would that make you feel? What would you want the rest of the world to do about it? Not a crime is our response. What we are, next one, we are a campaign that creates street art murals around the world to talk about education and equality in Iran.
We've continued to make connections with local community stakeholders who are organizing their community in a very grassroots way, as well as larger institutions.
The first work I do is spiritual, and then everything else, literally everything else.
We met Reverend Vernon Williams, a community activist and a violence interrupter who overcame his own past in gang violence to become somebody who's just constantly serving the community and really included us in a lot of his community outreach efforts.
One of the things that is striking is it sounds like the same experience of my ancestors as slaves. And they're being denied the right to exercise their faith, and they're being denied the right to an education. So that's problematic. That here we are in 2016, aren't we? Yeah. And the powers that be they white, but definitely the authority figures that be are still using slave mentality rule to oppress the people. And whatever happens to you because of a power is only with a matter of time before it happens to me.
I got my bachelor's degree at BIHE in psychology, and then when I moved to the US, I realized that it worth something. Now I'm at Columbia University. I have access to different libraries and in a very diverse environment. It's amazing. I would like to have a message for BIHE students. I want them to study really hard, and I know it's a hard work. We don't even have actual building. Sometimes we don't even see the face of our professors. I know it's very hard and it's disappointing, but I want them to know that the thing that they are doing now, it's worth something in the world.
I'm so glad to see that you're writing something like this on here.
Thank you.
Do you want to tell me a little about it so I understand it a little more?
Yeah, it's going to be two figures and they're kind of collaged faces produced by education is not a crime, based out of the human rights crisis that's happening in Iran right now, where the Baha'i religion, which is a minority, anyone that is of that religion is denied higher education and tortured and killed sometimes.
My grandmother's grandmother's a slave. So that's not too many generations ago to be hearing slave stories. Both my parents had received a college education, and they always told me that instead of giving me shoes, instead of giving me clothes, instead of taking me to the fanciest places, they said, Jonathan, we are giving you your education. It is a blank check on which you will write your future. And they always impressed upon me the importance of education within our communities and made it a point to explain that slaves were tortured, murdered, and killed for learning to read and learning to count. So I think that this is an amazing thing to bring to Harlem, because in this day and age it's important to point out the similarities between our cultures and not the differences, and show that ultimately we are all humans striving for something, which is self-betterment and a better life for ourselves and our family.
I think we have achieved a lot. We have made the persecution of the Bahá'ís in Iran part of the discourse of many people around the world. People who did not know where Iran was, who the Bahá'ís were. They know about these issues now and they talk about it. So it's an achievement, but our work has just begun.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I think it's very much related to the story of BIHE. That hand, it's kind of a hand of an adult person.
Yes.
It reminds me of that group of people that created BIHE for
the caring,
children.
the needing it to help.
Yeah, for like a children that had a dream.
If I didn't have education, I don't think the courage or the confidence to do this or anything more would have never even be in my consciousness. That's the truth. Somehow all these murals can spark some type of conversation, seeking equal opportunity. And once all those barriers are out of that, removed, I think, in my opinion, the world will heal every day in a better light. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.